Hello everybody and welcome in this presentation concerning the advanced wood shaders that I've developed. I made them because I've developed an object and I did not understand why my wood could not look like a real wood. So I took a lot of time in the shader mixer and I understood what happened and corrected the issues that I met. And now I've created this kind of advanced wood shaders which allow you to take the control over your woods really. And you have 10 band patterns times 2 orientations for each patterns, and each of them has 6 specular models, and you can switch between these models once you have chosen one of them. And you can also add ray trace mixers allowing you to increase or decrease the kind of ray reflection the quantity of ray reflected you have. And so you have at the end many possibilities and advanced control. And of course you can use all these materials without watching the presentation. It's just like taking a surface and double clicking on one of this specific shader, and if the pattern orientation is not the right one, take the rotated version, and that's not more complicated than that. I made this presentation for the ones who want to go deeper in the model and really understand how to customize their highlight shape, what are the important parameters in the interaction of the light and the object shape, and the different drivers of the highlight size. And this presentation is pretty long since I also wanted to share some different aspects of the studio materials more in general. So I hope that you will have a lot of fun in it if you're watching it, and that you will learn a lot of things. So let's begin now. Right, you will find the shaders in shader preset V3D Advanced Wood Shaders. Okay, you have 10 band patterns that you can see here, and on these 10 basic patterns you have 6 specular model. What is a specular model? The specular model is what is going to give you the shape of your highlight, but the shape of your highlight depends actually on 3 things. It depends on the shape of your object, it depends on your specular model, and it depends on your lights. Okay, these patterns, since you cannot always choose the axis, the orientation of your UV maps, are also in a rotated version. Let me show you. I'm going to take this cube, okay, and this is the pattern in this sense, and now I'm going in rotated, choose the first one, and the pattern is 90 degrees rotated. It's the same for all objects. Remember that you have to use here the surface selection tool, okay? And it's the same for everybody. Here I have this orientation. Let's take a texture shaded. It's in this orientation, and here it is turn 90 degrees. All right. So depending on how your objects are UV mapped, you may have to choose the basic orientation or the rotated orientation to have the aspect that you want. For instance, if I take this gun, okay, and I apply this wood, here it looks like something convenient. If I take the same rotated wood, here you feel that it's not the way it is. That's why you have basic orientation and rotated orientation. Switch and raise is an option which will allow you, once you have chosen your model, to switch to other models. First, only switch the model. For instance, you have chosen a 3D light and you say, oh, maybe an advanced model is better, but you have already put your tiles and already set your specular highlights, and you don't want to change anything else, then you can just switch to another model. The only thing is that if you choose for DS default woods, if you switch to this model, you will lose your specularity maps, let's say forever. So you won't find it again by switching to another model. That I have kept this option because people might want to use it, but take care, this switch will use your specularity map. I have not found any way to keep it. So I personally try to avoid switching to other models. One important thing is that you can switch to the model, or you can also add ray trace mixer. What is ray trace mixer? I'm going to click on that. You see, nothing has changed. But this time, in the surfaces, in my reflection, I have the opportunity to replace my initial reflection map, which is a map-based reflection, by a ray traced reflection. If you put it to 0, you come back to your initial reflection, which is driven by this map. If you go to 1, then rays are totally replacing this map. It will be a 100% ray traced reflection. If you go higher, logically, physically, you can go above 1. Yet, you may want to have more strong ray traced reflection. That is why I have added the opportunity to drive this ray tracing up to 2. But the result is not physical, but it might be interesting in some renders. So, here is globally what it consists in. You have 10 patterns, rotated patterns, okay? 6 specular models, both of basic patterns and rotated ones, and the opportunity to switch between those different models and eventually to add ray tracing. Now, if I come back, for instance, to basic 3D light, you know, this time in reflection, I have lost the opportunity to go to a ray trace, to have ray tracing in reflection. And this time I can switch, for instance, to Blin, and I changed not only my specular model, but I had the opportunity to trace my reflections. This is really important for floors, for instance, because wood floors are often varnished and then reflective. And if you want the windows and the furnitures and the characters to reflect on the floor, then you have it might be interesting to have the ray trace mixer. Or if you want to really on other object than floor, you can want some object to be reflective too. For instance, once again, a 3D lights and ray trace mixer. If I render, you see here I have nothing to reflect because I have no environment. But here you see the reflection of this light color. Here is the reflection of the cube on the cylinder. So now let's have a closer look at the different model and the complementary drivers on highlight shapes that they are providing. So for each base pattern you have 6 specular conditions, but the specular conditions can be gathered in 3 families. The first family will include 3D light, Blin and Fang. The second family will include DS Advanced and Roof, and the last family is DS Default. Note that DS Default takes the specular default conditions for the DS materials, but presents a difference regarding the tiling, because forwards I needed to have a different tiling for the general maps and for the bump and normal maps, for instance. Here I take this wood, okay, take the DS default material, so it's just like usual DS default. The difference being that you have in bump the bump strength like usually, okay, but you have also the tiles specific for the bump. It's the same for the displacement and it's the same for the normal mapping. So you have for this DS default the same thing as usually, except that you have to take care that now the tiles are separated regarding they are affecting if they are affecting only the texture or the bump applied on the textures. And this is the general tiling, which gathers diffuse and specular and ambient and opacity and so on, but does not include bump, displacement and normal mapping. Okay, so for instance here we can make a render, and we have the basic tile for all the maps. Okay, and if we change for instance to 6 the texture only, now you see it is much more so the pattern is replicated 6 times, but the bump one has not changed. If you want to change everything at once, don't navigate in all of this, just go here and hit tile. Okay, and if you take default here and hit tile, you will have all the tiles. If you want to multiply everything by 2, you replace 4, 4, 4, 4, 2, 2, 2, 4 and 4, and this is and then you remove your choice, and this is much faster than browsing ambient, bump, oh here I have to change the tile and so on. Now just hit tile here, and this is working for all the models. Here you have just the bump tile because you have chosen bump. Here go in default and you will have all the tiles. You want to divide by 2, you hit out at 5. Okay, out at 5. Here it was 2 at the beginning, so it will become 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, and now the pattern will be twice bigger as it was at the beginning. And so now the pattern is seamless, but since now it is divided by 2, it's cutting at the middle of the map. Okay, that's why here you see a seam line. Now if you take I change only the general tiling. If you take 1, you see you don't have any seam here, since all the patterns are seamless and tileable. Okay, providing you apply a multiple, of course. You apply a multiple of an entire multiple of 1. Okay, so that was for what is specific to DS default. Otherwise, for DS default, the specular condition as usually, okay, driven by glossiness and specular color and strength only. For instance, here I put my full glossiness, okay, and render. You have something like that. And maybe it would be interesting to apply on each object to see the difference. So I'm taking the DS default, I'm taking all my parameters, and I'm changing all my glossiness. So I don't want to spend time on it. I write glossiness 100, render. So this is what you have for 100% glossiness. Okay. I'm cancelling, otherwise it's too long. And I decrease to around 17, which is near my default. So here, depending on the shape, you begin to see highlights. And now if I'm strongly decreasing glossiness, you have things that are much more highlighted, but the highlight contrast regarding the rest is, let's say, smaller, the contrast of the highlight itself regarding the whole texture. Okay, this is the classical DS material. Now let's apply 3D light on all of them. For this, you see, I take my surface selection tool, okay, click 1, press Ctrl, and click all the other ones that I want. So that allows me to change everybody in the same time. I take my 3D light, okay, and I'm going to make a render. So you see, it is not at all the same result as before. And the result depends on the shapes of your elements, as the previous model, but this time what I want to show you is that depending on your parameters, depending on the shape of your objects and of your light, it is interesting to change the highlights. And for this I have two parameters. I'm going to take just the sphere and frame on it and render it again. You see, this is the 3D light model on the sphere with this lighting. It's gonna change as a function of my lights. In my scene here I'm using basic ray traced light. I can use another environment with distant light. And now I will have a totally different render. This is normal. This is light and material interaction, but within a software. Okay? So I will have something completely different. And if I'm taking also deep shadows lights and render, so it's pre-calculating the shadow maps, you will once again have something different. I'm going to let this calculus till the end. Okay, so that we can compare in the render editor. Okay, let's go in the render editor and compare the two last ones. I'm going to toggle. Okay, my primary is with ray traced. My secondary is deep shadows. You see, there is a difference just because of the lighting conditions. Nothing else has changed. And you see also on the cube behind, there is also a difference. So take care that three parameters actually will determine your aspect of highlights and global materials: the shape, the conditions of reflection, specular and ambient, and so on, and the lights. I'm going back to my basic lights because they render faster. Okay, and everything else is hidden. So now, what do I have in this material which differs from usually? It's that first I have once again separated my general tiling from my displacement, bump, and normal tiling. Okay, this is the first difference, but the main difference relies in the specular model I've chosen. It presents, as usually, a specular color and a specular strength, but something has changed, that now you have two drivers for your highlights, and you have another specular model which presents two highlights. The first one is glossiness, the second one is highlight coverage. Here, glossiness is optimized for instance, spheres and something which has curvatures, because curvatures matters a lot. Something which has curvatures like spheres. Let's render this, okay? And you see here you have your highlights where curvature is the higher, okay? And here too. And on this cube, for instance, on these cubes, you have here two different cubes, the basic DS default cube, and you have no difference. Why? Because you're sending flat lights on flat areas. There is no reason at all why there should be some highlights. So here I have a second cube which I made myself and is different, you see, from DS default. DS default has one line for each surface, for each face. Here I have three lines, and now if I render, so render, okay, here you see that you have an highlight. Why do you have this highlight here? Is because the fact that I put three lines has introduced a kind of curvature. On this one I won't see it. Why? Because here I have flat area, here I have a flat area, and no curvature at all between them. So that is why the shape of your model is also very important. Okay, now how to use the specific drivers, how to use the specific highlight drivers. So let's go in specular. All your highlight drivers will always be in specular since they are driven by the specular model. you have this parameter glossiness and this parameter highlight coverage. One thing that would be cool is that in order to see better, I am going the pink one. No image, pink one. So you see here, there's a way to see better where the highlight is. Don't use it for your renders, but it's just in order to explain it. So I'm going to take all of them, these 3 ones, and go in all and take my specular no map pink. Okay, and you see that with exactly the same. Oh, I have forgotten one of them. Sorry, I have forgotten this one. Okay, specular known and this. Okay, here we go. Now you see that with the exact same model and the exact same lighting conditions, you have different shapes of highlights. This is the highlight shape driven by object shape. Okay, and you can reshape your highlight using the highlight shape driven by, for instance, highlight coverage. Let's increase highlight coverage. One thing you have to know is that it's in Fang, Blend, and in 3D Light, this parameter exists. This parameter is making highlight shape varying very fast between 0 and 1, and much more slowly after 1. If I take 5, I don't change my glossiness now. If I take 5, I have this kind of highlights. And highlight is what is going to give you the impression that you have wood. Your brain is trained to treat this kind of information. Now I put my highlight to 0.5, re-render. Now this is much more smaller highlights, and I take to a very small one and re-render, and this time this is really tiny, you see. But you can also play as usually with glossiness. Let's come back to 0.5 for instance, and now play with glossiness. And glossiness will behave as usually, meaning that if you increase it to 100%, your highlight will become a point, and if you drive it to 0%, your highlight will cover all your surface. Okay, let's make very high value and render. This time the highlight becomes so small that you almost not can see it anymore, especially here on this object. And you can once again play with highlight coverage and increase it to 5. Actually, there are 2 complementary things. You see here, the difference is not really important. It's because it's a kind of 2 parameters driver. Sometime at some level, glossiness will become the more important parameter, and changing your highlight coverage won't change a lot of things. And at some other points, your some other values of glossiness will become less important, and highlight coverage will allow you to really shape it. For instance, here we can have the impression that the variation is the difference between the initial highlight coverage and the highlight coverage at 5 is not, there's not a lot of contribution. Now, if you have a look in the render editor and you compare the 30 and the 31, okay, then you see that, let's make a toggle, it will be okay, much more visible. You see that the size of the direct reflection of your light in your materials has not changed a lot. So it does not really drive directly your highlight size yet. If you have a look deeper, you see that the specular color has sprayed all over the materials. You see here, no pink at all. Here, pinky around the sphere. Okay, see the difference? And this is the influence of highlight coverage for high values of glossiness. Okay, now let's go to the studio once again and see now what's happening with slow values of glossiness. Let's make a 37 and highlights. I'm using this because I'm working on 3 objects in the same time, so it allows me not to browse. Let's put it at 1 approximately. Okay. Let's make a render. So this is mainly due to the influence of glossiness. These large, very large highlights. And if I now strongly decrease highlight coverage, you see that now highlight coverage is shaping much more the shape of the highlights. And if I put it in the middle at 0.5 approximately, you see that it's not completely linear. It's very difficult to make it linear, but you have still a big difference between 0.5 and 1, and let's say 0.3 render. Here you begin to have strong difference. So you can play with these 2 parameters, which is glossiness and highlights, to really shape it. I'm going to take totally arbitrary, let's say 15, and let's say 0.5, exactly the middle of them, and re-render again, and you will have once again something different, still depending on your lights and objects. And this is important because it allows you also to really change your highlights regarding, oh sorry, I have no light at all in my scene. Okay, regarding the kind of light you're using. For instance, when you have an urban environment, things really behave differently. So you don't have, I didn't change my material, but just my lights, and here you have a strong difference. So now you are forced to rechange things. Sorry for the dog, it's not mine. Okay, and now you can increase your highlights contribution this way, and still, if you don't find it enough, you can also play once again with glossiness and decrease it one more time. And why? Because you see, shape your highlights. This is the summary, and this glossiness and highlights. Sorry, I'm beginning to be tired. This glossiness and highlight coverage work together, okay? And this is going to give you the color of your highlight, and this is going to give you if it is more or less powerful regarding the rest, the diffuse and the ambient map. So this was for the 3D lights, Fang and blend materials. Now let's go to the second family of material, which is DS Advanced and Rough. These ones are also very, very similar. And the thing is that the rough material presents much stronger bumps and displacements and normals than advanced, and it allows you to have more specular components due to this displacement than is in this one. And this can be interesting. I'm going to begin by the advanced model. Okay, maybe we can change also our wood. Okay, and now I'm going to switch to my basic usual lights and make a first render to see what it's looking like. You see, this rough model is more interesting on very flat or very curved objects. On objects with a low ray, how it's named, curvature, ray of curvature. I don't know the English name. On objects where there is a curvature but the curvature is low, which is not really interesting. Yet it is much more interesting on my cube. And let's have a look at the DS cube. Okay, here on this cube, which did not present any highlight variation when using Fang, the Fang 3-light or blend model. Here you begin to see interesting things. Okay, and on these objects which presents low curvature, the problem on this kind of object is when you have different lights, you see the spot linked, the highlight spot linked to the first light, the highlight spot linked to the second light, okay, first light, second light, and so on. Okay, the highlight spot due to the third light and the fourth light. Okay, but on flat objects and on objects with strong curvatures, like this one has here, this model can be really interesting, and they are complemented by rough models, okay, which gives you the same kind of reflections but on a much more rough and let's say bumpy and displaced aspect. Okay, what are the additional parameters linked to these models? I'm going to take just this one to have a look. It's just as usually you have ambient, bump, diffuse displacement. You have a general tiling for what affects only color, and you have separate tilings for what is affecting surface modifications in terms of height, which is bump, normal mapping, and displacement. Okay, no, individual tilers and general tilers for everything that concerns the color itself. And you have in specular, you have your glossiness, your specular color, as usually, which is mapped, yours and your specular strength, but you also have something called specular sharpness, which, just like in the previous model, your highlights, your additional highlight driver was working together with glossiness. Here, the specular sharpness is also working together with glossiness. Let's have a look. Now I'm going to apply the DS Advanced model on all of them. DS Advanced, okay. Have I missed some of them? No, it should be okay. And you see always these spots and so on. What I want to show you is the influence of the shape of the object. I'm taking this pure cylinder and I'm going to shape it this way maybe and re-render. So where you had two highlights, now you have one highlight, and if I shape it very, I'll rotate it maybe to see it better, this way. If I shape it with so that there is a strong highlight of curvature, now you see there is something pretty nice. Let's frame it and re-render it. So this can be okay because there is a strong radius, I find the name, radius of curvature. I reduce here at this level the radius of curvature and re-render it, and now there is a problem. So these specular models, advanced and rough, are really more useful on high radius of curvatures models, presenting high radius of curvatures, are being very flat, just like this one, these two ones. And here you see it's beginning to be more interesting. So I wanted to add them because the other, I think that the other specular models are not convenient for flat surfaces. And if I take a DS default, you see once again, but on the DS default, I find something flat. and that's not what I want to see. So I preferred adding these two models, even if they are not maybe totally convenient for all kind of surfaces, but much more convenient for flat surfaces and surfacing presenting high radius of curvatures at some places in their geometries. So now I'm selecting all my surfaces here, and I'm going to apply a DS Advanced material, or maybe I could keep only the interesting surfaces and frame them a bit more. Let's place it there so that we have only the interesting parts. Oh, okay. So what can I do is to take a pinky specular spec. Okay, a pinky specular color, so that we really see the influence of the driving parameters. And common specular strength of 17, and this should be okay. Preliminary render. So here it's with the default settings. Okay, oh, I must have chosen also my metals. It doesn't matter. Okay, and now we are going to play on sharp. Okay, highlight sharp. Here the highlight is not really sharp. I'm going to increase highlight sharp, and the highlight is going to begin to become sharper and sharper. Just I have not chosen this one, and let's go to a strong sharpness of highlights. And now on flat areas it almost disappears. And on highly curved areas it is really thin. Okay, let's come to an intermediate value. Yes, this one, for instance. Render and then play with glossiness. Okay, this is an average value, and this is what it's giving for this value. Now I'm going to change only the glossiness, keeping the same highlight sharp variation, and glossiness is 90 per. I want to reduce the size of the highlight, so I'm going to increase my glossiness. So now it is really reduced, so that you just see this little line of specular. And if I reduce my glossiness, it's behave as usually. It's behave as usually, and even stronger than expected. And can I do something with it? Yes. I'm going to sharpen my highlights, and then I come back to something more normal. Okay, here I sharpen my highlights, and it's kind of increases virtually my glossiness. So the thing is that you can play with these two parameters to really shape your highlights the way you want, and remember, not keep them pink. Okay, so I think if I like highlight sharp 1.2 and glossiness 35, I retake my basic words, take glossiness 35 and highlight sharp 1.2, and now it's gonna be the same render, but this time the specular map will take the specular color of the wood. Okay, and let's re-render again, and you have something like that, and it's pretty. I like it, but it's my own product, so my opinion is biased. Okay, this was for DS Advanced. Now let's take the rough one. Rough, and also here. Okay, now everybody is on the rough model, and in the rough model you see just as usually all your common habitual usual drivers and glossiness, and this time a new parameter called specular sharpness, which behaves which works together with glossiness. And let's take a small specular sharpness and have a let's take them on all of my woods, rough sharpness, and take a value of 1 approximately, render, and this is really sharp. You see these little strays of a highlight, little lines of highlights. You can increase it, and it's increasing the size and surface occupation, how to say that, of your highlights. Yeah, I think you see how it's happening. And you can decrease it to almost 0. And these times your highlights will be really sharp. Negative values won't change a lot of things, except for some really specific conditions that it would be too long to explain here, but there was an interest to keep negative values. Now I can also, of course, play with my glossiness. For now it's 68. I can strongly reduce the glossiness. 22 is really low. For glossiness it's pretty low. So here is the render with a very low glossiness, and you can go on and shaping your your highlights, playing with this. I don't remember here. If I put a negative value, I cover almost everything pretty softly. If I'm taking a strong value, here I hover highlight everything. Why do I hover highlight everything? It's because my glossiness is already basically very low. Okay, so I can counter this by increasing my glossiness. And now I can have once again very small glossiness. So play with these two parameters. What I like to do is to choose a glossiness around 17. Okay, and lock it approximately this value, and then play with the sharpness. And once I have found a nice compromise, I change a bit my glossiness to see if I cannot reach something better. Okay, here I would like, I like it this way, but I would like to cover a little bit more the surface. So I have locked initially my glossiness. I've taken this value for the sharpness, which I like, but no, I wouldn't like to change sharpness, but decrease a little bit the glossiness by 10%, for instance, and re-render again. And now it's changing just a little bit the aspect of the material. Let's compare it in the render editor. Okay, compare 74, 75 in a toggle mode, and let's go. You see, there is not a lot of difference, but something that can really change your final render qualities. Okay, so if you use one of this model and go on with playing with the two drivers parameters, then I think you can really obtain what you want. The general settings that I have put are convenient to cover most of the situation, and I think that if you don't want to go in the material parameters, you can keep the default settings out there. After that, if you want to customize really your woods, then you can go in these parameters. Okay, I think maybe it's not useful to present the DS default material more than that. What I'd like to show you now is that you can just apply them as they are, and it will be fine. I have chosen a scene. Let's come to the perspective view. Here you have something well known by dream home users. okay, and which is a room placed in a house somewhere, and this is a kind of teenager or children room, and I have taken the same one here with a character inside, approximately the same one, since I had already moved some elements such as the desk and the desk chair. Okay, now I'm going to focus on this one. This is the initial room which is loaded. Okay, I have removed some walls and things like that to be able to work more easily. And if I render, this is already pretty nice. This is the basic settings. Here on the floor there is something, I don't really know what it is, if it's a projected shadow. Oh yes, here, I remember what it is. It is linked to the it is linked to the reflection color of the flora, if I remember well. So which is mapped actually by this kind of map. So it's not a problem right now. What I wanted to show you how it's looked like. Now I have set up a new. I have saved my render editor. Yes, it's here. You have the basic room, okay, with the initial woods and so on. And now and now I have set up the same scene in the same environment with some very different woods which are taken there. The studio format. Okay, that were taken there, so we can. I have hidden, yes. Just normally the character should be. Where is he? Where is he? It's Genesis 2 male. It's oh, his name Jaden, Teen Jaden. Okay, but I'm hiding him because otherwise the renders will take too long. Because of the subsurface scattering and very specific skin properties. So if I make just a render like this, you see you have something completely different. I have, for the walls, I have already chosen one of my woods and tweaked him just a little bit so that it could be just like a white wall. And actually, it's one of the wood presets. And you see that on the floor you have the character reflections, the furniture reflections, and you see here on the bed you got a highlight on bed, and the highlight is more reflected than the rest on the floor. And for this you just have to increase a little bit the number, the render settings, the max ray trace, okay, otherwise you won't see all the reflection. If I take 0, see, you can't have any reflections, okay. That's normal because the rays are reflected 0 times, okay. So if you take 1, you should have a first reflection, yes, and you can go further, and if you take, for instance, 2, 3 and more, it will increase the number of times the ray reflects on different elements. I'm just going to keep 3, 4, 5, 4 for instance. Okay, now I'm going to change all these materials. This wood for the floor, I have 2 kind of woods which are better for the floor. I'm going to take my 3D light one, and you see this is oriented this way, so I can keep it this way. I'll take the rotated one, and now it is oriented this way. So I'm going to keep this orientation, and I see clearly that I have a strong problem of tiling. So I'm going on these materials, and here write tile, and make 6, for instance, 6, 6, 6. 6 for all the properties. And now if I have a render, there is this wood, but there is no special reflection on it. You can see the reflection of the furnitures and of the character. It is because the reflection is environment mapped. I don't know if you could call it this way, but there is an environment map, which is one of the classical reflection settings. No, I want some real reflection, so I'm going to switch and raise, and I want to keep my 3D light wood, but this time with some rays. And now you'll see that on your floor you have some ray traced reflection, and you can play with the intensity of the reflection regarding the reflection, the mapped reflection color. Let's try this to have the first point and see if we have to change anything. So we see a little bit of the reflection of the character and of the door on the floor. I'd like it to be more imaging. Let's say more imaging. So I can increase that to have a floor which is more imaging. It's a little bit more imaging. Okay, we should not do more, otherwise I fear it could be too much. Sorry. Now I'm going to change the woods of the rest of the room. Okay, the door. I'm going to change the door with, let's say, maybe an advanced, but which one? Think a little bit stronger. Pretty clear wood. I feel it is not the right direction for the pattern, so I'm going to take the same one, but with the other direction. Okay, I'm gonna just have a look at the door because I don't want to lose time on renderings. So this is the rough model, which is going to give you strong highlights on very curvy surfaces. If you're satisfied with this, you can keep it like that, or you can change your model for just a classical font one, for instance. Let's have a look. So now this is much more, there are highlights, but they are much less strong and shiny. Or you can go back to this model, rough, and change a little bit. For instance, in the specular, I want something less strong and bigger, just to have a look. And now maybe the door becomes globally too shiny. Though maybe for this kind of scene, with this kind of settings, the best thing is to keep a Fong or a Blin model. No, go for a Blin. And have a look, of course, and have a look. And I'm going to go for a Blin. And this is okay regarding reflections. And now I'm going to change the rest of the woods. So I'm going to take something more, what can I take? It's not obvious. Maybe this one, which is a little bit yellow with not strong patterns, not really marked patterns. And I'm going to begin by 3D lights. This seems to be the right orientation. This also seems to be the right orientation. This is clearly not the right orientation, so I'm going there and apply this one, and now this is better. For this, I can keep the bed like that and change my kind of wood for the rest of the furniture, such as the closet. I think it's the name. It seems. Oh no, this is for the I don't know the English name. Draw. For the draw, it's not the right orientation, so I'm going in my initial one. Okay, this is the right pattern orientation. For the chair, what I'm selecting, not obvious to select. Maybe we can have what kind of chair? White, no, it won't be nice. Was in this wood, I can slightly change for a Fong, for this kind of Fong, and here I have to frame it to see the orientation of the pattern. Can it be okay this way? Yes, it can be okay this way. And for the furniture, the desk will be just like the desk will be just like the chair as a material, since they have been bought together. And change a little bit the models. Not in this orientation, really in this one. Yeah. So all the wood parts have been changed, I guess, and I'm gonna come back to my third camera and make a small render. Okay, so now you have a room with 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 woods, 4, 5 woods. Okay, and if for instance you find that here there is too sharp reflection, you can also play with it. Or if you feel like that here the tile is too large, let's begin by the tile too large. Okay, the tile is too large regarding the real scale doors, so I'm going there and hit tile, and I'm going to increase 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, and 2 and 2. Okay, and the two last ones have no name in front of them. Here you see bump horizontal, bump vertical, displacement, normal, and what concerns the texture has no name in front of it. Now it is doubled, and I am under the impression that the global scale of the wood is better. Okay, let's cancel it too. We'll finish the render at the end just to compare the two rooms that we had. Now we are going to have a look at this part here because of the shiny borders. And first I'm gonna frame it to see where the shiny borders come from. Okay, these shiny borders. And I'm going to frame it in my perspective view. Okay, frame it more and see with the how it's named wire texture shaded. You see that it's coming actually from the fact that here you have these two lines instead of one. Okay, and this introduces a kind of curvature variation, which is going to induce an highlight here and not here on flat areas. That is why you have this highlight. So maybe it's not, this kind of thing is not obvious. What is the best model to fight this? I should try a rough wood, and this is one of the worst case of figure. And I'm going to decrease the glossiness. I'm going just to have a try. Okay. By playing with the roughness model, the thing is that I'm going to, how to say that, to fake some kind of highlights linked to the bump, which would globally increase your highlight on flat areas. And so decrease the contrast of your highlight on this kind of really curvy direction variation surface. So I'm just going to try this with my initial camera angle and see if it is better or not. Okay, you still have your strong highlights, but now they are attenuated by the fact that there is some highlights on the sides mainly due to roughness. Okay, and maybe we're going to keep it like that. For more coherence, I think what could be nice is to add the same rough model on other surfaces too. Since it is supposed to be the same wood. Is this the right orientation? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And now make a kind of render, full global render. Now all the surfaces are the same, rough, very rough ones, except that on the bed, you see here there must be several vertices, and now I'd like to play just on this aspect of the highlights. I find it too sharp on the borders, and maybe for this kind of thing 3D light could be nice. Cancel. Okay. And whoa, settings or 3D lights. Advanced, default, Fang, Blin generic present can be good in this kind of situation, but it's not obvious. If you really want something precious, you have to play with it. Otherwise, you see that it's looking pretty fine in general. So render with a plain one. Okay. Maybe I can increase the strength of it. Strength 100. Coverage bit more, really more. Glossiness bit less. And what does it do? Okay, we can keep it like that. It's pretty soft variation. It's okay. I find it's okay. So that will be the final render. That is probably the only one that we have not cancelled, and we will be able to compare it with the previous one to check that we have a very different environment, and this by not spending a lot of time with it, just choosing models and maps and changing a little bit the tile. And close it, and in the render editor just check the two last ones, 1881, and you see I changed oh, not 18, it was 79. 18 was another one. Okay, I changed the orientation and the reflection of my floor. I changed the woods of all the furnitures and the wood of the door. I can eventually, on what I was telling this, on the wall I am using one of the woods. If I'm closing this, and I'm using one white wood which I have tiled a lot. Okay, and that's why you see these little strays here on the preview. And what can I do with it? Where is it? Okay, it is there, and I can maybe play with to have something, why not more glossy, more specular, and change a little bit the ambience of the scene, not saturated too much, and just, no, it's too saturated, just to have a look. Okay, if there is what the kind of difference you can obtain on a world which is not dedicated to be wood at the beginning, but I wanted to add this white wood to give people the opportunity to play a little bit with this kind of shaders, with some kind of white surfaces, but not totally white neither. So we are not far from the end of the render, and no, it's the walls is the only things that I have chosen, and I can go in the render editor to compare the 81 and 82, and you see you have much more less matte, more shiny walls, and the blue atmosphere is not obvious. I should have maybe forced it a little bit more, and no, not opacity toggle. Okay, you see mainly the highlight has changed, so this allows you to play also with the highlights on your wall. I wish I could have had a stronger difference. Give me the specular color to show you that with a simple white you can really change your atmosphere. So maybe something more saturated but not too much. Okay, this you can also play with the diffuse part. and the ambient one to give a colder atmosphere to your scene. And you can do that also with let's say you want to have something colder, and you can add some blue component to a bit everything. And maybe I could reduce the render settings in terms of shadow samples to go a little bit faster. Okay, this is maybe a bit abused, but the fact that you're adding some blue components will allow you to, let's change your ambience globally. Okay, I thought it would be more faster, but it's not that faster. We're gonna just compare, but okay, this is abused. I recognized. Let's go, please. All right, render editor, and compare 82 to 83. Okay, no, this the end of this presentation is oh, come on, it's just for the fun. Okay, so you can change the atmosphere of a room just by maybe adding some blue to the different components. I should have done it to the let's say outer furnitures. And for instance, if you have added some blue but you have added too much, that's a render editor is pretty, you can do a lot of things in there. So you load as your primary render the 82 and secondary the 83, okay? And now you can blend them. Where is my result? Okay, my result is here. You can blend them. Is it an alpha? Yeah, it's an alpha blend. So you can add slightly, completely the blue atmosphere, slightly the blue atmosphere. So let's take this middle blend, okay, so that if you made a render, made some modification, then there are too much, just take the two renders and adjust your modifications, and you can do much more things than and then you just have to save here. It's not more complicated than that. You can increase oh, not that much, the contrast of the images. You can blur just a little bit. You can do really a lot of things actually, and you can blur a lot, and it would give you this glowy aspect. And okay, well, that's all. Let's say if you make a modification and you want to not to recalculate everything, think of mixing some of your results. Well, I think that's all for this presentation, okay? And just to say that with this woods you can apply it very fast, or you can play with it in a much deeper way than usually. And I hope that you will have a lot of fun with these advanced woods, and I hope that you've learned something during this presentation, not only on these woods but globally on how to tweak materials in DAZ Studio. Thank you very much for watching this presentation. I think maybe 1% of the people will go till the end, but that's all. That's not a problem. So have a nice day, and bye bye, and maybe see you for another presentation.